Christmas can come with a lot of high expectations from our kids, but as parents, we can't always meet them. So my next guest is sharing how to manage disappointment with your children this holiday. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson joins me. Great to see you. This might feel like a downer, only you want to be prepared going into these moments because they're going to happen.
They are going to happen.
Christmas and beyond.
Christmas and beyond. So that's actually something that I really like about this topic, about what we're talking about today.
Okay.
And it's the fact that this is no respecter of persons.
Yeah.
No respecter at all. It doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter the stage that you're in. We are going to feel disappointment. We're going to feel those things. So, I mean, we even think of a small child, a 2-year-old who is hoping for orange juice in their cup instead of milk and is disappointed,
Were you
right?
at my breakfast table this morning?
Just this morning,
Okay.
right? We think of teenagers who might be expecting or hoping for something for a 16th birthday or for an experience to happen, and they're disappointed. And we feel this disappointment every day. It could be in dealing with other people. It could be, you know, in a trip we hope we're going on that we don't. It's everywhere. So I actually love that this is something we all deal with. It applies to all of us. I also think it's really cool that this is something that we want to recognize and be aware of regardless of the stage of life we're in. So yes, we're talking about how important this is for parents. We're going to wake up Christmas morning potentially because that's what's on the horizon and we're going to deal with this. But grandparents actually have a lot of these situations with their grandchildren also. Grandparents for 2 reasons. One, they do give gifts and they do offer time and energy. And sometimes grandchildren don't or aren't comfortable with what they get. They're disappointed in what they get from their grandparents. But even bigger than that, grandparents are often the place where grandchildren come to express their disappointment.
They're the pillow.
They are. They're the ones that our grandchildren or that grandchildren go to say, oh, I'm dealing with these disappointments. And so if you're a grandparent, you want your ears open to know how to navigate these situations because you're the pillow they're looking to put their head on oftentimes. So it's really cool for all of us to have these skills and abilities.
We're all in. We're all invested. You say our first step is to rearrange our view.
We are. We're going to rearrange the view. So we look at disappointment when it comes from our kids as a really bad thing.
Oh, it's a bummer.
It is. It's a bummer. And half the time, it's an extra big bummer because we make it about us.
Well, I feel guilty. I feel bad. I couldn't live up, you know?
Right. It's exactly right. And we turn it into something that means we weren't enough. Being disappointed is essentially an unfulfilled wish. So we're going to look at it like that. This is a wish that our children or someone had that doesn't get fulfilled. And when it comes to Christmas, birthdays, even summer vacation, there is this high exchange rate, right, that we're dealing with. So if we can view it instead as an opportunity, remember, everyone deals with this. We will deal with it our whole lives, and every stage needs to know how to manage it. So instead of this being bad or something you didn't do right, we want to rearrange our view and look at this and decide, this is the coolest opportunity ever for us to teach our children how to navigate this emotion, what to do when a wish is unfulfilled. If we can look at it like that, we see it as an opportunity instead of seeing it as something that means we didn't fulfill the role, or we didn't check off all the boxes, or that we're not good enough, or even we tend to look at our kids and think that they're ungrateful. And we turn disappointment into this lack of gratitude really quickly.
That's big.
We do that
because that's easy to do.
It is.
Be grateful for what you do have.
Right. And so instead of looking at them and saying, hey, it's a wish they had that didn't get fulfilled. I can get on board with that. We can work with that. We immediately turn it into, you're not grateful. Which leads us to a lot of things we don't want to do when our kids act this way or when they have this unfulfilled wish. We tend to do things like shame, like say, I can't believe that you're getting this upset over shoes. It's not that big of a deal. They're just shoes. We go that route, right? We minimize it by saying, again, it's not that big of a deal. Or we even try to distract them. Hey, you'll be fine. Here's a candy cane. You'll be fine. You did get this. We don't want to minimize the fact that there's been this unfulfilled wish. We want to avoid those don'ts.
What do we want to do?
We want to make sure that we instead are there to empathize and to validate. We want to empathize with them, which means we've got to somehow trust that when they say that this isn't okay or this is frustrating or I'm sad about this, we have to see it as their truth. If we can see it as their truth, then we know how to validate them. Then we can look at them and say, you seem disappointed. It is a bummer that you didn't get what you were hoping for. Well, that is a bummer. We've all been bummed out when we didn't get what we were hoping for.
Just say it, acknowledge it.
We can acknowledge it, right? We can say, I'm sorry that you're so sad about this gift. I can see that it's frustrating to you. We can just simply sit with them and hear it instead of thinking that we have to change it, minimize it, get rid of it, or abolish it.
You also want us to do lots of asking.
Lots of asking. We're going to ask questions. This is asking them things like, hey, what do you think we can do with what you did get? Or, oh, you were hoping for something different. What can you and I do to make that happen later?
So you're sort of putting the solution on them, or at least the solution finding.
In front of them, to give them the opportunity. And remember, if you validate and empathize, their negative emotions, the frustration, the crying, whatever it is, it will come down. And as soon as it does, then you can ask those questions and you can work together. Asking those questions when they're in a moment of kind of panic or disappointment, freak out, it won't get us very far. So we want to empathize first, and then we're going to go ahead and do lots of asking.
You say it's great teaching ground for explaining the difference or pointing out the difference between behavior and feelings.
They're very different. And if we haven't taken time to teach our kids this yet, start today. We don't ever want to get on top of our kids in negative ways about the fact that they feel something like disappointment. We want to instead address the fact that they don't always behave in ways that's acceptable.
Yes.
So it is just fine that you don't like that grandma gave you blue shoes instead of the black ones you were hoping for. That's just fine to feel disappointment, that the wish was unfulfilled. It isn't okay, though, to pout, to give silent treatment, and to mouth off to grandma. That's not okay, right? So we don't ever want to oppose a consequence for feelings. We only want to then impose those consequences for behavior.
Can I press a little? You mentioned, don't make it about, I have an ungrateful child. What is the fine line of ingratitude? Like, does that have a place in this conversation at all as you talk about talking back to grandma or the tears or the pouting?
It does. And sometimes our best way to gauge that is just if it continues.
Okay.
So if you see a child and, they're expressing the disappointment and they're unable to then negotiate those emotions, even with your help, and then you continue to hear the complaint, the complaint, the complaint, the complaint, then there is a place where it's acceptable to look at our kids and say, hey, the constant complaining, that sounds like you're not grateful. And we can help them understand what that behavior potentially is imposing on other people. So we can speak up that way. A really great way to finish that conversation with them is to lead them where you hope they go. So to be able to say the complaining is leading to us feeling like you're not grateful, and then lead them by offering something like, I hope that you'll recognize the sacrifices that were made so you could have this. And all of a sudden you put in their mind, oh, there's another way to look at this. I don't have to see it as disappointed or I'm not grateful. I could recognize that sacrifices were made for me to have it.
Those words were so perfectly spoken. It wasn't shameful. It was just saying, I hope, and you lead them a little breadcrumb.
Right where you hope that they go. Now remember, they're not there yet.
Right.
They're actually not there yet. But by offering it to them, they potentially, kind of like looking out a window and seeing that it's across the street, and if they want to cross the street and get it, they could. And we want to talk to our kids all the time that way, right? Even as they come home from school, we can say, instead of, why don't you ever take care of this? But to look at our kids and lead them and say, thank you for, or I love it when you do, or I really am grateful when you take care of.
Breadcrumb, breadcrumb, breadcrumb.
Even though they haven't done it yet.
Yes.
So when they're feeling this disappointment, offer them that space, recognize it. This is disappointing. That is lame. I'm sorry that it didn't go that way. And then be sure to hit them with, thanks for recognizing. And they'll start to recognize it. They don't know otherwise. They don't know what to do with an unfulfilled wish. Sometimes we don't know what to do.
Right. Well,
So
and
we can help them.
I love that you've broadened this conversation. This topic does, as you predicted, go way beyond Christmas morning and into a lot of different parenting opportunities that now we feel prepared for. Heather, thank you so much. To contact Heather for counseling, you can find her information on our website.